subject today is the impact of AI on SF writing and art. Hi, I'm Scott Noel, and I'm the moderator for this panel. As the promo for our panel says, some publishers are already looking at cover art generated by AI, and some magazines are being overwhelmed by AI-generated submissions. So how will AI impact SF and fantasy and all publishing in the future? The way I'd like to start is what I'd like to do is a round where we introduce our panel, and then I'm going to ask them one question myself, and then I want to open it up to the audience as soon as possible because I really want to hear what everyone here is thinking, and we want to take your questions. So, on our panel today, we have Hazel Zorn. Hazel is an oil painter, speculative fiction writer, and a fine arts teacher. Her nonfiction criticism, No Excuses for AI Art, can be found in Blood Knife. She's been published in many short fiction outlets, the most recent of which is in Parsec's current Triangulation Anthology, 7-Day Weekend, right here. Hazel, what else should we know about you?
That pretty much covers it. I'm here to represent the Butlerian Jihad.
Go and buy Triangulation, by the way.
Yes. Well,
it is a local jewel. We should be very proud of it.
And Ken, Chiacchia?
Chiacchia. Chianti and Pinocchio.
No, I have no chance at all. Ken has been a public relations writer, newspaper reporter, science fiction author, EMT, search and rescue dog handler, firefighter, radio commentator, and hobby farmer. He is now a science writer at the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center, PSC. Ken, what else should we know about you?
Well, you know, I was never interested in AI in terms of science fiction. I shouldn't say that. It's fun to read stories about AI and the emergence of intelligence in machines. But it wasn't a main interest of mine until I suddenly found myself writing about AI nonfiction all the time. Increasingly, we're getting involved with AI at work, both in terms of trying to make it work better, and it is an omnipresent tool now. Everybody has used it for just about any kind of research, and some things we don't normally think about as research, like analyzing literary content. That just, and I have a little story about AI and using it for various things, but I'll wait until it's an opportune moment to share it.
Cool. I probably have competing stories. Lawrence C. Connolly's books include the collections Visions, This Way to Egress, and Voices, which feature his best stories from Amazing Stories, Cemetery Dance, the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, Twilight Zone, Year's Best Horror, and other top magazines and anthologies of fantasy, horror, and science fiction. And just before I ask Lawrence what else should we know about you, I'll tell you, you guys all won't know it, but you're really sad that Lawrence isn't in the panel, because he's really good at that sort of thing. Lawrence, what else should we know about you?
Thanks for those kind words. That was very nice. I'm on strike. I was not supposed to be here this summer. I was supposed to be in LA. I have a big film project in the works, and I was ready to go. I had just finished a major part of the Bible, which is basically a 100-page document that spells out the entire series in prose form. And I was booked. They had me on a first-class seat and everything. And then they said, then we went on strike. And of course, we're on strike. You know why we're on strike? We're on strike for ChatGPT to get that out of our lives, or at least into a manageable corner of our lives. So one door closes, another door opens. I'm not in LA. I'm here, and it's great. I'm great to be here. I'm thrilled to be on this panel, and away we go.
Me, I'm Scot Noel. I'm the editor and publisher of Dreamforge magazine, where the human adventure is just beginning. Decades ago, I had a career in computer game development, and for the past 23 years, I've worked alongside my wife Jane in our own web and digital marketing company, which is called Chroma Studios. And Jane does all the layout and design for Dreamforge, along with much of its art. So we've been a team for about a quarter of a century now. Now, at Dreamforge, one of our founding goals is to pay authors and pay them as much as we can. And with our recent Kickstarter, we were finally able to reach our goal of paying 8 cents a word, which is the current floor on the professional pay rate. We work with our own writers group we call Dreamcasters to help them improve their writing skills. And we have no interest in AI-generated stories, as that misses the point of our mission. We're there to work with writers and help them improve their skills and find new first-time writers and all that. Now, the reason I say that is because in my day job, I'm a little opposite of that. I'm Director of Content Development at Chrome Studios. And personally, I'm thrilled by the advent of generative AI as a tool for us to use. In just a few short months, it has improved our work quality and output, solved coding problems for us, helped us make better proposals, helped us research faster and more effectively. Staffers who would normally be bothering me for the right wording on something can now polish their own work by consulting ChatGPT, and I can attend to higher level functions without interruption. And the next time we hire a writer, I would expect them to have AI experience, just like we expect artists to know how to use Photoshop. So here's my first question for the panel to get us started. And it's actually a question that I've asked ChatGPT. And after we have our discussion and questions and talk to all you guys toward the end, I'm going to reserve a few minutes. I'm going to read you ChatGPT's answer. But here we go. Let's assume we're talking today to an audience of writers and artists who are afraid that big corporations will use generative AI for writing and art in ways that will put them out of a job, or at best sample their work without permission and thereby create derivative materials for which they will neither be credited and for which they will get no compensation. Which, by the way, if you want to learn some real horror stories on this, just follow the Hollywood writers and actors strike underway right now. It's absolutely incredible if you want to see, like, Evil Corp. So, how do you answer that? What message do you convey to human creators in response to these concerns about generative AI? We start with these.
Yeah, I would say that those are good concerns because they are happening. I think that a lot of the time what happens to artists is that you're very much devalued, right? Especially if you're a writer. I understand that creative people will understand that all the time. And we're always told that new technology is a tool and it's neutral and that it just depends how it's used, right? And I think it helps to be a little more clear-eyed about who operates these technologies and why. So coming at this as an artist who has a day job as an artist, I'm a self-contracted oil painter, I do commissions, and I see a lot of that stuff. It's not a tool if the artist is something that can be set aside in the process, right? So a tool changes the way that you work. So a lot of artists that were in physical media didn't like Photoshop initially until they learned how to use it, and that it was just for print output, and that all the skills and the things that you know that you have can go into that program, and you just work differently. You're not, working with solvent or paint or things like that, but you're part of the process. You're inextricable. Something like Midjourney just says, well, no, you're gone. We're just going to steal that, and we're going to put it together, and we're going to do what we like, and the artist is gone, right? So the concern is a labor concern, is what I would say to artists, and that you don't have to accept that as if it's just like this unstoppable deluge that you have to endure. You can actually find solidarity with a lot of creative people, writers, artists, who just say, well, no, in creative arts, I don't think that belongs here. And we want artists to be part of this. It's a human work that we value, and we fight for that.
So, God willing, and the Dow does rise. I'm 3.5 years from retirement. I don't plan to stop writing. If anything, I want to try to write other things, because I won't have to sing for my supper anymore. And there are cynical times when I think that I am getting out at the perfect time, because I am definitely worried about these things. I came up with a great story, and then it just vacated my mind. Maybe it'll come back to me, but yeah, I think that we need to be. Oh, okay. So I had a long argument with some folks on the National Association of Science Writers email list, and what was going on at the time was the market was getting flooded with lowest common denominator writers who were being conned into doing writing projects for nothing so that they would get the exposure.
You can die of exposure.
You can absolutely die of exposure. And what I was trying to tell people is, there were folks on that, established science writers on that list who were like, well, they're just not very good. I'll have an easy time competing with them. And I was trying to say, no, that's not how it works. Once the market is flooded with this stuff, and people can't tell that the people who are buying cannot tell the difference by and large, it's going to devalue our work even if it's appreciably better. And with AI, who's to say that we're not going to get a point that it's as good, at least by some measures? I mean, I'm sure the folks at Marvel would love to just set the AIs at work on these stories, because they already have the feel of something that's crafted for eyeballs instead of actually writing a story. And just, but, all right.
You raise a good point. It's getting good, and it looks like the real thing. You know, if any of you are writers, or you know writers, or publishers have basically knockout qualities that they use to determine whether or not a manuscript needs to be read. So something lands on the publisher's desk or in a publisher's queue, look at it. If it's not in the right format, it's gone. If the grammar's not right, it's gone. Don't even read it. But the thing is that what generative AI is really good at is getting the format right. The content is not so good, but the format is perfect. As a matter of fact, and let me demonstrate something to you. Let me show you how good and how inept generative AI is at writing something. Screenwriter John August asked ChatGPT to generate a pitch or generate a synopsis of a screenplay titled Knives Out in Space. And this is what Chat gave him. In the far-flung future, wealthy space entrepreneur Harrison Zorn is found dead in his luxurious space station, the victim of an apparent suicide. Well, that's really a good sentence. There's not a lot of, it needs to go somewhere from there, but that's
Now,
good.
wait a minute, how are you a victim of suicide?
Well, you got me. Yes. However, Detective Benoit Blanc, a renowned investigator, known for solving even the most complex cases, has a hunch that foul play is at work. As he begins to investigate, he finds that every member of Thorne's eccentric and contentious family has a motive for murder. As the detective delves deeper into the mystery, he must navigate the tangled web of lies and deceit spun by the suspects, all while trying to stay one step ahead of a cunning killer. With the help of Thorne's loyal assistant Marta, Blanc must unravel the truth before the killer strikes again. As the body count rises and the tension mounts, it becomes clear that no one is above suspicion in this high-stakes game of space crime and deception. Will Detective Blanc be able to solve the case before it's too late, or will the killer get away with murder in the cold vacuum of space? Okay, so it's grammatically fine. I mean, it's properly formatted. It is prose. I mean, the nouns are followed by verbs and so on. The commas are really exquisite commas. And these are the things that an editor or that a producer or someone who's going to hire us is going to look at first and say, okay, put that in the pile, I'll read that later. But once he starts reading it, he notices there's some serious problems with this. And one thing in particular, you picked up on it, is the nuance of what words mean and what they suggest, but also what we are told, writers, screenwriters, novel writers, when we're pitching something, you don't say, how will he solve the crime in the cold vacuum of space? No, you have to have it in here. And that's what generative AI can't do right now. It can't come up with the new thing, the twist, the something that nobody's seen before, the something that somebody doesn't see. You know what this is like? This is like the stuff that a producer gives a writer and says, hey, I got a great idea. Take a look at that. You write that. Find me the ending. Find me how it ends. So, Marvel? Absolutely. Yeah, Chat can write marvels. But, you take a film like, anybody seen Linoleum? It's on Hulu. Okay, I'll give you a strong recommendation. Just subscribe to Hulu this month. Linoleum is that good. It's that unexpected. It's that fresh. It's the kind of thing that I don't think ChatGPT is going to be able to write for quite a long time. And that's why we need to keep ChatGPT in its corner, and we need to let the producers hire the writers, and that's why we're on strike.
Now, I could give a lecture on this stuff for well over an hour just by myself, and I'm sure each of our panelists could as well, but I'd like to hear what you guys are thinking. So, who's got a question, and we'll all try to field it or direct it to a person or whatever. Okay.
Well, basically, it sounds like they're trying to do a Harlequin romance version of writing. I mean, we used to say you've got your 12 plots and they've got 20 authors and they deal them out and say, write me one. And that seems sort of like what they're trying to get the AIs to do now, is to be able to hand them, you know, I mean, take Shakespeare and put him in outer space, you know, something like that.
So, let me take a real quick thing. Part of this is, and again, people here disagree with me, but it's a tool. And you have to be able to use the tool and have experience to use the tool to get anything that looked like good results. For example, at our work, that's my wife Jane right there in the Dreamfort shirt, I was, you know, when I started using this and learning how it worked and what I could do with it and started raving about it, Jane used, I don't think it was Chat, but I think it was Google's version, Bard, to get some results. And she actually came to me and said, this is all garbage. This isn't getting, why do you think this is cool at all? And I said, well, what are you trying to do? And what questions did you ask? It's like, oh, I understand, you didn't ask the right questions in the right way. And then I said, here's the result I got from Chat based on what you need. And Jane said, oh, this is great. So it is something that you need experience, and you need to be able to work with it to understand how the tool works. And that's just something that I tend to be good at and love to do. So that's why I'm excited about it.
Well, so I think, like, just bouncing off of that, I think that we need to distinguish what is a tool and what is not. Because of course we can't turn the clock back on this technology, but we can demand its ethical use. That's what politics are for. And I think something like Midjourney, coming as an artist, I would say that that is not a tool because I'm not using it, it's using me without my permission. Something like ChatGPT, I could see it becoming an interesting search function, good for research, things like that. You could, but it becomes a labor issue, of course. I'm sure you've all heard about novelists sort of opposing, understandably, publishers feeding their book into the algorithm so that they can just take it and then generate. I assume the dream would be to just cut the author out, right? Which is, of course, not what we're trying to do. So I just want to make a distinction there.
So two things that are relevant to that. One is that I attended a talk on the ethical concerns in AI a little while ago, a conference. And one of the presenters was an expert on artificial intelligence who left Carnegie Mellon to work for one of the big banking companies, and I can't remember which one, it doesn't matter. And she was talking about how they wanted her to use artificial intelligence to figure out how to make lending more fair. And she rapidly realized, and these were her exact words, if you use the bank's lending data, you're just going to continue to make the same mistakes you always made. And in terms of it being a tool, what she wound up doing was she started creating artificial data to train the AI. What would fair lending look like? Let's create a database that looks like that and use it to train it. So there are definitely ways of doing this. The other thought I had was, if I weren't increasingly concerned about putting any new work of mine online that hasn't been sold, one thing I can think of for ChatGPT would be to give it a novel and say, critique this novel for me. That would be interesting, because I have the choice of maybe taking, maybe not taking the advice, but it would be interesting because it's going to go back to those old mistakes. But those old mistakes have sold in the past. So maybe that would be useful. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So we could maybe have a future where ChatGPT is generating the story and submitting it to a publisher who is having ChatGPT read it. And then we'll all be replaced by ChatGPT readers and have a conversation with us and tell us how good the story was. Just real quick, because I see we do have another question, and I'll let our moderator handle that. But just real quick. The document that I read to you, just getting back to this, where might ChatGPT fit into our creative world and into our professional world? I really can envision a future, not too far away, when producers will use chat, and they already are using it, but when producers use chat above board, letting people know that this is being done, and then generate a synopsis like the one I read, and then give it to a writer and say, fix this. Now the problem right now, contractually, how that works, is fix this or rewrite this doesn't carry the prestige or the money that writing a script does. And so what we're worried about now is that producers will consider the preliminary draft of an AI-produced script as the primary script, and the writer merely as the rewriter. But the writer in that case really needs to be the writer, and it needs to say so in the contract and on the film credits, because the writer is the one who solves the last paragraph. The writer is the one who finds the knot of the plot and untangles it. And I do suspect, I mean, I think it's inevitable, that there will come a day, I'd like to say there could come a day, but there will come a day when this generative AI will be strong enough to do some clever things and maybe get awfully close to the clever stuff that we're able to do. But right now, for the next 3 years, we need to make sure that writers are protected when producers say, okay, I'm using this tool, here you go, take it from there. And then we begin to regard ChatGPT as what it is, an interesting tool, a useful tool, like spell check and Grammarly and so on. But we do acknowledge the place that the writer has in their creative process. And I'm sorry, that was long-winded.
That's okay. I also have to key off one thing you said. In 1990, I had the opportunity to put a prediction in a time capsule for the next 20 years, and my prediction was that we'll see AI writing stories for other AI to read. So I was off by like 20 years. I don't know.
So I did AI in academically and professionally back when AI programs were still using Lisp. And at that point, the definition of AI was something we don't know how to do yet. And I think that's still true. ChatGPT isn't reasoning, it's not learning, it's scraping. It's pulling out information, and the reason it's coming up with a lot of really new synthesis, nice synthesis right now, is because what it is all pulling in is stuff that has been created. But you look at all these things you're talking about overtraining and training on bad data. If it starts spewing stuff out and training on itself, it's going to get boring really fast. Stanford University just came out with a study that said they sent, within a few months, sending simple math questions to ChatGPT went from a 98% accuracy rate to a 2% accuracy rate. Explain that one.
Did you just say math questions?
Simple math questions.
Oh yeah, it's terrible at math.
Yeah, so
I've tried to use it in marketing. Like one of the experiments I did was try to have it help me set up a marketing campaign and explain the logic of how much we're putting in and what ROI we get and all that. And it basically made me spend like hundreds of thousands of dollars and get nothing in return. And I pointed this out to it, and it said, "Yes, that is ridiculous." So,
the definition so ChatGPT is I think it would be nice to see define what AI is, because ChatGPT is not what a lot of AI is. I've got a definition here that I pulled off of Mastodon. I just wanted to see what your reaction is. C. Weber described ChatGPT as mansplaining as a service, and honestly I can't think of a better description. A service that instantly generates vaguely plausible sounding, yet totally fabricated and baseless lectures in an instant, with unflagging confidence in its own correctness on any topic, without concern, regard, or even awareness of the level of expertise of its audience.
that's totally accurate, and also an extremely kind of fearful response for something that's just been born and is going to be amazing in like a year and a half.
Except that ChatGPT doesn't dig in its heels when you point out where it's wrong. It pretends to have known the answer all along.
Or apologizes for, not being able to.
It'll apologize.
It'll apologize.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. It seems like when we talk about these things, we're talking about a child, right? I mean, literally, this thing is just a couple of years old. And if we were to expect, a 5-year-old who also scrapes all the information that they're using to see the world and to come to conclusions initially, we would not expect that 5-year-old to be able to perform at the level that we perform at. Extrapolating that out into the future, though, begs the question, well, how good is it capable of becoming? And I think that is, the sub-answer to that is, I don't know, how good are the people that are feeding it the information, creating the algorithms? And like I
Well, if it
I
learns
was...
to be human, we're all in trouble.
I was just saying to you guys earlier, once that door is open, once we have set foot through the door is never going to be closed again. So it's not a matter of, whether this is going to happen. The question is now, how are we going to manage it, right?
Maybe the only thing I would point out, it helps to remember that deep learning is a statistical trick. It's a parlor trick of taking the data and saying, well, if this happens, how likely is it that this is going to happen? And that's one reason why it sounds at a very shallow level so good, is it's like it's cribbing off of everything it has available to it to get something that looks kind of like statistically what you're asking for. Whether that actually can become individualized thought in the way that we think of when we common sense say artificial intelligence, I don't think anybody knows. Whether that's going to be a moment where it just tips into real consciousness, or whether it's just yet another false lead in artificial intelligence, and we're going to wind up doing it some completely different way, which may happen.
Yeah, because like, I mean, it's not intelligent yet. Like, we're calling it AI. That's kind of like, it's not artificial intelligence yet. It's like that's
not
the
learning.
beginning of it, right? Like, it's sort of interesting, I guess, because the reason that people in the arts are so upset is like, well, we're all trying to have experiences here, and we're sharing experiences with each other. Like, when I write something, I am experiencing that, and I'm putting myself into it, and then you, the reader, do some work to experience with me. Machines don't have experiences. They can just say things or copy things, and that's become pretty evident when I see it try to like come up with plots or fiction. I think, yeah, I can't really engage with this, and I think there's a reason for that, is that there's a separation between that and what we want this to be, right? Like, some people want it to be their best friend. I think that's kind of strange. I would like it to figure out something cool like fusion power so that we can have free electricity, but instead it's liberated me from being paid for doing art so that I can do my taxes, And so the failure of vision here that just kind of burns me. But yeah, I think in the arts we're key to understand that, like, well, if it's not people-centered, I don't consider it progress. I want to have that experience, and I want to share that with people.
I heard a simple explanation of how it works is that it looks at what you have, one word, and figures out what's the next word. And then once it's figured that out, then goes the next word. And on. It's taking off of whole documents. But I wonder if there's a better explanation of how it's doing it.
That I think is a good simple explanation. I'm not an expert in the software development at all, but the two things that it generally comes out with that you can tell, and like they have these systems online like Chat Zero or whatever, where you can put it in and see whether it's been developed by Chat. The two things they generally are looking for are what are called perplexity and burstiness. And perplexity being that idea you just mentioned of the word following the word. When does that not make sense to someone who actually is good at English? When is that kind of unusual? And burstiness being what in my world would be overuse of keywords. It's just using the concepts too much, and it's hammering on them too much. And what I found is my ability with having the experience that I have is I can have ChatGPT generate something, and then I can look at it and say, yeah, not that, too bursty, change it, and put it through one of those things, and it'll say completely written by a human. Because those things are only software, and they're only looking for certain things, and if I know what they're looking for, I'll get past it. So yeah, you had a question back.
Yeah, I was actually wanted to follow up on that, that Hazel was saying, like, do you think that there's going to be a market force at all of people saying, look, what I come to for art is the connection of experience. And so I can see, like, writing copy for advertisements. I don't care who wrote that, right? I'm not invested in that. But when I look at a piece of art, when I read a story, it actually matters to me that there's a person on the other side because I feel seen, because I feel connected to them. And I just wonder what you were feeling, like, by and large, I know that's me, by and large, do you think that there's enough people who feel that way that will actually influence the market so that we aren't going to end up with a ton of movies written by AI, that we're not going to end up with artwork everywhere created by AI because people feel cheated?
No, I agree. I think people feel that way with a lot of commercialized art already. I went to a French atelier for 9 years because I didn't want to go to a graphic design school because I tried to, and they wanted me to work for free, but to make advertisements for Coca-Cola. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. And so I just really spent a lot of time working on painting. And I have noticed, I don't know how many people are doing this, but I have noticed people saying, well, yeah, maybe you know, I don't have to watch another Marvel movie, or maybe I don't have to, you know, look at another book cover that looks the same as other book covers because that's what the market demands. I've had some clients actually recently that have come and said, like, you know, I understand that, like, you're have some high rates, but when you do an oil painting of my kid, every stroke that goes into that, I know that you're bringing some expression and soul to that, and it's just so visceral because it's physical media, you know. I'm working every stage of that. It's not on a computer, it's not digital at all, and I'm finding people looking for that. That's just my anecdotal experience, but yeah, I kind of hope that that does happen. I think it'll bring a resurgence of, like, appreciation for a lot of really deep and good, interesting art. It also might just make things a little weirder. I've had artists react in the other direction, like, AI could never be this messed up, like, and that's fun too. So
I like I mean, I think that there will always be a market for unique and personalized and human art. There's a separate question of whether AI gets to the point where it fools us, though. But that's not. There's also always going to be a vast market for things that make the endorphins come out of your brain at the right moment, and that market, that mass market, is practically made for this kind of AI once it gets good enough. So I think that both are going to coexist.
Yeah, I think I can imagine a future. I can imagine a future in which the actual there is a market for people who want to read, as you were describing, things that are generated by thoughtful people that and not by generative AI. Just as you know, I don't think they're still around. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but remember Easton Press? I think they were called. They used to do deluxe leather-bound editions, Smythe sewn, you know, well printed. And there was always a market for those kind of books. And of course today we have publishers like Centipede Press and Cemetery Dance. They do these very fine editions that people like to buy. People like to hold in their hands a book that has been crafted by an artisan. And so there are people who don't care. There are people who are just happy to read on a screen, and they don't have bookshelves in their homes. So we have two different markets developing. And we will have a market. It's inevitable, because there are going to be those of us who are going to want to have that human connection. We want to read the real stuff. We want to be challenged. And there are going to be the people who just want to sit back and open a beer and turn on the TV and let it wash over them. And I would imagine there will also be, overflow between those two. Occasionally I might just want to watch something stupid, but for the most part I want something thoughtful. So just as today, when I turn on Hulu or Netflix and I have a choice between a serious drama, a film, or I have reality TV, I get to choose, and I don't tend to choose. I don't never choose. I ever choose the reality TV, but there might be a someday when I would want to do that, and so that it's nice to have those kind of options. I see those options waiting for us down the line. But on the other side, just one other thought here is that I had a young writer, very new writer, was asking, well, what's the harm? What's the harm if I push a button, I type a sentence, push a button, have AI generate a novella for me, and then I just fix it up a little bit. You know, because when you do that, it's boom. I mean, the novella's there. It's like you click a button on Amazon, and boom, and so it just creates it for you instantly. And I answered him thus, but I hope he heard me, is that because it's fun. Because this is what we do. This is what humans do. We create. We love to create. It's the difference between going to Italy and watching a YouTube video of Italy. It's the difference between being and observing. And I want to be. I want to be in that activity that makes me human and makes me connect with other humans. And I don't think, I'm confident that there are enough of us into the future that there will continue to be a market for that kind of an occupation, because there is going to be a market for that kind of fiction and drama.
Well, I totally agree. I think what's sad, I guess, about some of these generators is that you have people that want to be artists, and I think what they're afraid of is being bad at it. Well, you have to be bad at it to get good. You have to be bad at it to get good, and even if you make bad art for a while, that's still valuable because you've reclaimed your time from the menial work that you have to do in the day, and that should be valuable. Like, every single stroke of that brush is mine. Even if it's bad, I learned something or I got something from it. I don't feel like I wasted it, you know? Like I do at work, clocking it sometimes, but, you know, selling someone a product at Midjourney and being like, oh, well, it's democratized now. It's like, well, no, they didn't do anything. A prompt is not the process, and so you missed out
Yeah.
on all of it, and that's really just sad.
And it's fun to create bad art.
Yes.
I mean, I know when I was starting out, I was
Oh, it's
having a
great.
blast, I was writing crap, it was so much fun, and I didn't know the difference, and I begin to learn, you begin to learn, and you
cheat
begin to
yourself,
get,
yeah.
you begin to get better and better at it, and it's always fun, and there's always a certain element of this crap, you know, but the next year you're a little bit better, and you look back and say, wow, I've learned from where I've been. It's just part of being human, isn't it?
I want to get Joshua, he raised his hand like 3 times back.
Oh, okay, so this is kind of a practical question, I guess. You know, I can see the possibility that in the future, no matter how good it gets, ChatGPT and other things will never be able to write a Cormac McCarthy novel or an Octavia Butler novel or whatever. But most of us are not there, right? Including me. I mean, I think I write okay, and you know, I've published some things, but I'm not a great genius. I have no pretensions about that. And my concern, I guess, of course, is that, you know, because it was mentioned, Ken actually mentioned you don't want to put anything that's not published online. I'm at the point where I don't want to have anything out there because it can then train on me, and much quicker than I can
That's
compose
the
my own
reason,
novel,
right there.
it can be me. Would be the, you know, kind of nightmare scenario. So the practical question is this. Obviously, the screen actors and writers whom I, you know, support wholeheartedly, they're unionized. And so they have, you know, they have a certain authority and power of numbers. Writers and artists of many kinds tend to be kind of, you know, isolated.
Yeah.
And so I guess the practical question is, for example, in terms of negotiating contracts that might have a no scraping clause, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do individual writers like myself and probably most of the people, writers and artists like most of the people in this room, what entity, you know, I know there's like the National Writers Guild, there's or the American Writers Guild, the National Writers Union or something.
SIFA.
There's SIFA as well, right? Although that's not a collective
They're not a
bargaining
union or
unit,
professional
right?
organization, yeah.
So that's my question, you know, is there something comparable to that of which anybody in this room is aware that would actually be a collective bargaining unit such as SAG and, you know,
Yes.
and
So
that would actually do
one
it?
reason this is happening, these actions are happening, is that no publisher can make that guarantee to you. If they put it online, if they store it on the Google Drive that their company owns, it's still there to be mined. I don't think Google puts a limit on itself on scanning private documents for content. And you know, it's not going to steal directly from me because it's got so much else to pull from, but it's absolutely going to steal from me.
Yeah.
It's a matter of, you can't do more than put a sign on the door saying do not scrape, and the people that are scraping have the option to read that, to follow that or not.
Correct,
So I
but on
So
the other hand,
copyright
that's
law
something.
is,
I mean,
it's
that's
a
better than
Wild West
nothing.
right now, right? So the copyright law is being challenged, so there's, if you guys want to follow Matthew Butterick, so he's an artist and a writer and a lawyer, and he's involved in like this big class action lawsuit. It's him and a bunch of artists basically going after, well, art generators specifically, for just the violation of copyright law. Because even if you generate something, you can usually, researchers have figured out how to say, here are all the artists that you took from, those are copyrighted, normally you would have to pay for that, so now what are you going to do? This piece of artwork that you thought was free now, it's actually very expensive, and so there's going to be some legal stuff that happens. Independent publishers, I know that, like, I'm working right now on Tenebris Press Anthology. I'm a slush reader. It's a charity magazine that is taking the proceeds. It's called Thank You for Joining the Algorithm. We're reading for it now, but it'll be out, and they're taking all of the proceeds for that to donate to artist and writer networks that are trying to fight generative AI or get clauses put in contracts in big publishers to say you're not scraping my stuff, this is mine. Because I understand that your initial concern is kind of like an aesthetic concern, right? So like, you know, I think you sell yourself short. You're, you know, like writing is, you know, some people are like, you know, yeah, like Cormac, or sometimes you're on the mid list, right? But like even art that is sort of like mediocre, if it's human creative, deserves to be protected in the law.
Yeah, and
so that's
whoever
going
you
to happen,
are,
I think.
right,
Or, like,
I believe that, you know, even though I wouldn't put myself up at the top or at the bottom, I still believe
It's
that there's a
valuable.
distinctiveness and a value to my
Yes,
voice,
absolutely.
as do we all, right? Could I just, what you said, Matthew Butterick, is it B-U-T-T?
You get Butter and Rick, so Butter, like butter, and then
Butter.
R-I-C-K. Yeah, you
Okay,
can find him.
gotcha.
He talks a lot on podcasts about like the class action lawsuits happening, and he's very much up on the news. So I follow that just to see where it's going.
Okay.
Yeah, and let me just follow up on something else that you did say, which is there something else like the Writers Guild out there that can represent other writers and protect other writers? One of the reasons why the Writers Guild is such a strong organization and is a union, it's a writers' union and has the right to strike. It's the only writers' union that has the right to strike. Even the Dramatists Guild doesn't have that right. And I'm a member of that organization as well, and we are right now petitioning to get that right. But here's the reason why WGA can do what it does is that unlike a novelist or a short story writer who kind of works in seclusion and then sends her or his work out into the world and then is bought by a publisher and is published, that's a very small chain that the work has to go through. In filmmaking, in television, in Hollywood, the writer starts the job. The writer gets paid first. The writer does the first work. The writer produces or writes the script, and then you have a producer come on board, you have a director come on board, you have money begins to be raised, actors are hired, a crew is hired, locations are scouted and rented, and this huge industry, a huge conglomeration of people come in who are all working and earning money to bring this piece to fruition that the writer has created. If the writer stops working, if writers stop working, then that whole industry kind of grinds to a halt. Not entirely, but now that the actors are on board, it has ground to a halt. But the thing is, the reason the WGA can go on strike effectively is because there is an entire industry, an entire city that depends on the work that the writers do. And I don't know how a novelist or a group of novelists could request the same thing when the only person that would be out of work would be the novelist and his publisher, and the publisher could bring out other stuff that was in backlog and in public domain. One other thing, and that is that, let's see, oh man, terrific point, and I lost it, but it will come back around. But the thing is, oh, I know what it was. I was talking before this panel to the owner, the publisher of Air or Nothing Press, who has a big dealer table in there, and he was telling me that he has written into his contracts now that nothing has been scraped, that this is not produced with any help from generative AI, and I think that's the way it has to be. I think that just as we, as writers, sign a contract that says there is nothing libelous in our story or our novel, that we should also sign a paper that says, no, we didn't use ChatGPT, or if we did, we used it here, here, and here, and these are the acceptable ways that it can be used.
Well, we're running out of time, sorry. I want to wrap up and give these guys a chance to promote themselves as well. So I did say at the beginning that I basically put these concerns into ChatGPT, ask it the same question, and I wanted to read it to its response, which I'm sure will be taken with great cynicism by most of our panel. Dear creators, as an AI language model, I understand your concerns about the potential impact of AI on the creative industry. While it is natural to feel apprehensive about new technologies, I want to assure you that AI should be seen as a tool to augment human creativity, not replace it. Here are some important points to consider. Collaboration, not replacement. AI is most powerful when it collaborates with human creators, complementing their skills and enhancing their creative process. It can help streamline tasks, provide inspiration, and offer new perspectives. Ultimately, it is humans who give life and emotional depth to artistic creations. Protecting creativity and copyright. The concerns about unauthorized use and plagiarism are legitimate, and they should be addressed through legal protections and ethical AI usage. Ensuring that copyright laws and intellectual property rights are respected in the AI world is crucial to safeguarding your creations. Unique human perspective. AI may excel in generating content, but it lacks the essence of individual human experiences and emotions. Your unique perspectives, life stories, and creative visions cannot be replicated by machines, making your work invaluable. Embrace AI as a tool. Rather than fearing AI, consider embracing it as a tool to enhance your own creative endeavors. Use AI to explore new ideas, experiment with different styles, and expand your artistic boundaries. Focus on the human connection. As creators, your work can resonate with audiences on a deep emotional level. Art is not just about producing content, it's about conveying emotions, sparking conversations, and connecting with people on a personal level. AI can't replace the human connection. Ethical AI development. Advocate for ethical AI practices within the industry to ensure that AI is used responsibly and respects the rights of creators. Encourage transparency and fair compensation for any AI-generated content that uses your work. Remember, AI is a tool that requires human guidance and creativity to be truly impactful. Embrace the potential that AI brings to your artistic journey and focus on nurturing your unique talents and perspectives. Your creativity is irreplaceable, and AI should be seen as an ally rather than a threat. Keep creating, keep innovating, and keep sharing your unique voice in the world. Best regards, ChatGPT. Now,
About what
Does it
corporate
give you a
America would say.
bibliography of where it came up with those ideas?
Oh my.
I think that's on Skynet's homepage.
one of the things that you can do is, I'm not going to say it's generating original things, but put that in, you won't find anything that can find it as a plagiarism. It is not pulling those words from a specific website. It is generating, hence the idea of generative AI, based on a vast body of content that it has. It did not pull that from
And
a
if you give me half of Poland, I won't invade you.
And if you all right, let's talk about the things that we're doing. I'll just start real quick because I've been so positive here. Dreamforge, where you find Node generated content from AI, and our goal is to pay authors. And Hazel, here's one of your places where you are.
Yeah, I
So
actually
there's a
don't have
prop.
this, thank you for bringing it. So I am included in this wonderful Civility Weekend anthology by Triangulation. In it, I consider it a very positive AI story. Workers use an AI bot to get revenge on their CEO and get the money they're owed. So that's interesting, you should read that.
Lately, except for the nonfiction, my fiction work has been entirely in terms of unsuccessfully marketing novels, but hopefully there'll be some news on that at some point. We'll never know. But not to put anybody on the spot, I am hoping that we see the beer anthology before too much longer. I have an AI story in there,
That goes wild.
and you know, well, I won't say anything about the story.
Title of the, what is the title of this hoped-for beer anthology? Do you remember?
I thought it was beer.
Beer? Because your friends aren't that interested.
Okay. Fair enough. Let me see. So today at 4, I think it is, I have a talk, the working title of which was Space Shit at the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center. And I'll be talking about the research that people have been doing on our machines for space stuff, cosmology and space exploration, things like that. And I have a reading Sunday at noon. So.
Well, you can find all 7 seasons of Mystery Theater, Prime Stage Mystery Theater are online. Check them out if you get a chance. I have a new book out, 4-way collaboration with producer Mick Garris and writer Richard Christian Matheson and Sandra Becerril, who is the top horror writer in Mexico. It's titled Nightmares. It's from Gauntlet Press, and it has just come out in an Italian edition from Independent Legions Press titled Imago, I believe. So if you read Italian, it's a beautiful book. You can watch Nightmare Cinema on Apple TV or on Amazon Prime. You can hear about my next project when I'm allowed to talk about it.
All right, thank you, panelists.